when it comes to the people who are interested, even if they disagree with you, in actually speaking, versus the people that want to create a big distance and just never even bother engaging. I mean, I guess you could say you saw that with Richard Spencer, since he did not want to engage. But do you also see this with, let's say, the people who write hit pieces about you, that they don't want to engage?
Well, I mean, if I believe that if you gave me an hour in the room with anybody, by the end they'd see it my way. That's how much I believe in what I'm saying. That's how real I think, and how honest and accurate our interpretation of things are. So that, because of that, I doubt that they would be too interested in engaging. Engaging with Richard Spencer was one thing. Vox Day was a very good interview and a good discussion. Haven't thought about that in a long time. That was back in 2016, I think. And the guys out there that want to argue and be contrary, they don't want to engage, right? Like Matt Iglesias and I live in the same neighborhood. I've seen him on the street. No. I've introduced myself. I've talked to him in person. And every time I come across something of his where he seems like he's wavering, like he's about ready to take the red pill, I feel it. I can feel it, maybe. So I extend the olive branch and I say, buddy, come lift some weights with me. I'll coach you. I'll train you. I'll buy you a smoothie afterwards. And in between sets, we can talk about how Marxism is infused in CRT from top to bottom. He hasn't responded just yet. So it's interesting to see who says no and who says yes. I'm open and willing to talk to anybody credible. And I enjoy the conversations. And frankly, I love being convinced to see the world a different way, because that means I learned something that day. So I'm always open. I'm always open.
That's very interesting. I remember the magazine that's no longer with us, I used to write for, that had some connection, negative connection to Claremont people. It was called Thermidor Magazine, and we had this one article about Matty Iglesias. It was called Matty Iglesias, American Psycho. I think you can still find it in the Wayback Machine. But it really is about how his sort of neoliberal ideology is really for a massification of America through sheer just... let's say econometrics, and that is totally antithetical to, I think, the original American spirit. But what I wanted to ask you, well, of course, like your backstory and how you got here, but just really quickly, you're involved with people in the Claremont Institute, and I certainly enjoy a lot of those thinkers. I have a lot of disagreements. I'm much more, I guess, akin to, Dugin's argument, right, Lev?
Right, Gio. Right.
But how would you square the circle between the very pro-American, how shall you say, yeoman classical constitutionalist bent of the Claremont people, and with people that are more, let's say, exotic to the American experience? I mean, we mentioned Bronze Age pervert, but you also had an excellent interview recently with, what's his name, Sohrab Ahmari?
Ahmari.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm much more favorable to him, especially being, a Catholic myself. But how would you deal with sort of those contradictions of thinkers on the political right, or who have been categorized as on the political right, that are not necessarily of the American maximalist constitutional interpretation, that really see America as the promoter and the inflictor of this all-pervasive, let's call it, global homogenous ideology? So,
well, that's a tremendous question, and it's not one with any real answer. There's no squaring a lot of those circles, but let's take that in pieces. Dialogue with anybody who is authentic and genuine and who wants to have a real conversation, is willing to be challenged and willing to think about things. If you note in my interview with Sohrab Ahmari, there was a number of times where I'm like, I don't necessarily agree with everything that you're saying here, and I deliberately didn't attack, because I wanted him to just keep sharing, right? And he was excellent, and he responded very well to my challenges and to my very authentic line of question. Same with Dugin, he responded in the same way. So did Bronze Age Pervert. So does Curtis Yarvin. So does Michael Anton. Any of these guys that are bringing their just true scholarship to the table to talk about the questions which are truly the most important ones today. First of all, it's like, is the United States today an expression of the founders' ideas? Are we exporting the founders' vision today under the name of universal human rights? I would say no, right? So if we are Claremont, and we're talking about Claremont's perspective, and they're trying to champion the role of the American founding and those values, et cetera, and are they also saying at the same time, which they are, we need a complete total regime change? So then when somebody like Aleksandr Dugin will criticize modern America's exports of culture, political, this idea of universal human rights and whatnot, he's got a point. What are we exporting right now? Then you get into the arguments of, if you're going to be a nationalist, well, then I think that you're actually acknowledging that there's other nationalists as well. And if there are other nationalists as well, well, then you have to have room in your analysis to respect the existence of other nationalists. Otherwise, you're not really a nationalist. You're an omni person. You're a universalist. One of the things that Dugin really hammers home is his idea of, ethno-pluralism, or just a pluralism in general. And I asked my good friend and amazing scholar, Michael Millerman, about this question, about how do we square these ideas of universal right? If you believe in God, then you go through the progression and you do end up with a notion of universal rights through natural law. Now, as I asked Michael about that, how do we square this idea that we have this way of doing things here and the way of doing things elsewhere? And the way Michael described it to me, which was so eloquent, and I'm having him and Spencer Clavin on together next month. I can't wait for that. He said that the light shines equally over uneven terrain. If you think about that, okay, God, natural law, natural rights, it's shining down on all of us, but we're all coming to it from different perspectives, different terrain, different areas. Some people are in the ravine, some people are on the mountaintop. So the light shines a little bit differently depending on where you are. And I think that is what Dugin would say.
Yeah.
Okay, because Dugin is an Orthodox, right? He's Orthodox. So it means he's Christian. So that means he believes in God. So that means he believes in natural, all those things. But at the same time, he also believes in pluralism. So it's I've been asking this question on Twitter for a long time. Are there universal rights without God? And the reason why I like to ask this question is because the Democratic left believes that there are universal rights that they're trying to hammer and stuff down the throats of everyone all around the world and in the United States, but at the same time disregarding the existence, denying explicitly the existence of God. Most of the atheists are on the left. Joe Biden's a fake Catholic. We know this. So they are at once trying to use the sunshine of God and universal rights as a way to promote whatever perverted vision that they have. And then when we tie all the way back a little bit more to Sohrab Ahmari, when I asked him what is freedom for? And he says, freedom is not to do license. And I'm not sure I agree with this yet, right? Like this is why I'm a journalist and not an activist per se. He says that freedom is not freedom to run amok, but rather to do what's right. And so these are all the most important questions of our day. And I'm glad you brought them up right away. And there's no good answer.
Well,
just yet.